Hello, everyone. Honestly, been very hesitant doing videos lately because of all the chaos that's going on within the politics world, but it's just getting rough for everybody. Good versus evil. Evil be called good and good be called evil. But at least though, there's plenty of those that are still fighting for the truth, fighting for what's right. At least though at least it's not so dark to where there's no light at all, especially, you know, no, especially with the fact that God's light's still here. God is still here and he's still in control. I mean, things may not seem that way, but we already knew long before all this stuff started happening that times were going to be as dark as they are now. In fact, they're just going to get worse. I mean, this is just the start. It's going to get far worse when the tribulation period happens. But I didn't want to make this video talk all that. But real quick though, before I go on, look up Prophecy Watchers. They've been posting different, videos talking about different things and in regards to end time prophecies and what's going on these days, and it, it holds a whole lot of information that people need to hear. But as far as, seeing a lot of people who come on the internet and they say, oh, I'm this, or oh, I'm that, I identify as this, or identify as that, it's quite obvious a lot of them are just, and then I'm not saying this to make fun of them, but it's quite obvious that a lot of them are just craving for some sort of attention. And I just remember, it reminds me of when I was a teenager and I was, seeking the same, only I didn't post videos of myself, but what I did do was talk to strangers all over the internet, and that's sadly what a lot of these young people are doing as well. And for me, I did what I did because I hardly had any friends, and the one friend that I did had, she wasn't really a friend at all. I didn't had much luck with, boys. So I turned to internet just to, see if I could find some sort of friends. And that's honestly a whole lot worse for me than just being a lone wolf, really. And watching a lot of these people that are doing all these things, it just makes me wonder how many of them have been bullied in some way, or how many of them or I should say, is living a life maybe without a loving parent around, or has something happened in their past that's led them to where they are. And listen, I'm not saying that excuses their behavior. It definitely does not. It does excuse anything, because at the end of the day, they are well old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. I'm not saying excuses anything, but as Christians, sometimes we have to look at the person and just want and try to think, okay, what led them here? Because it's not like they're born and they're just like that throughout their lives. Something happened that led them to the point that they're at. Like I said, maybe they grew up without a dad or a mom. Maybe they was bullied. Maybe someone sadly messed with them when they was a child. We don't know. But something did happen that led them to the point where they are. And even though it may seem very dark for a lot of these people, we should not lose hope for them. I mean, I've noticed a lot of, people on the conservative side of the aisle, including Christians, say, they're too far gone. Basically, there's no point talking to them. There's no point trying to reason with them. Look, I understand. A lot of people on the other side are very bullheaded and very stubborn. I get it, and it can seem quite aggravating to try to talk to them because sometimes it may feel that it is pointless because it feels like it goes in one ear and out the other. But it's not hopeless yet. There's still hope there. A lot of them's honestly just trying to figure out who they are and what the truth is, and unfortunately, they're listening to um, doctrines of demons. They don't realize that God already determined their identity when He created them. They don't realize that once they find their identity in Christ, His love for them is all they need. That's all the comfort that they need. That's all the fulfillment that they need. All they need, they just need God and His love and grace for them. And sadly, not many of them realize that. Even those who say they are who are woke Christians, they don't realize that. And for those who are woke Christians, they're not Christians. Because if they were, they'd be following Christ, not make Christ follow them. They would do as Jesus said when He says to turn away from their sins, not try to make Him just accept them being wicked. But I remember when I was a teenager, I first started going on internet, talking to people on internet when I was 12. And I remember when I was 12, going in chat rooms. There was a guy that was 32 years old talking to me. He knew that I was 12 at the time, and he was talking about wanting to have sex with me. Which, thankfully, I quit talking to him immediately. But different times, stuff like that has happened while I was talking to people on the internet. Thankfully, though, except for one person, I did not meet any of these people that I met. And I met that one person when I was an adult. And thankfully, he was who he said he was. But when you meet people on the internet, they literally tell you anything and everything they think you want to hear. And many times, you're talking to someone who's just want to use you for their own gain. Whether they're just trying to scam you for money, or they're a pervert trying to lure you in, or they're trying to push their own ideology on you. In my situation, very rarely do you find someone over there that actually cares about you. Very rarely. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's rare. I've been in different situations where, I would meet a guy online, be a girlfriend, and all he ever wanted to do was sexual things with me on the phone or on the internet, and sadly, I did. I just did not had much value for myself. I was just so desperate to to have friends or have a boyfriend. I was just willing to do those things. I remember the first time I started doing those things was when I was 14. I didn't do anything physical with anyone until I was 18. But from 14 on up, I was meeting guys online and doing things with them online and on the phone. And I remember once talking to one guy who was from Ohio. He asked me for naked photos. I told him no. And, he went ballistic on me. Said a very awful, terrible thing to me, and ironically, he tried to get me back later after that happened. I had people lie to me about who they were. There was one guy in particular who tried to lie to me about who he was like 3 times. He always came up with some identity. The first time, um, he went by the name Ryu, Ryu, but his email said Seshi something, which is based off the Sesshomaru from the anime Inuyasha. That was that back during the days when I was a huge anime fan. But anyway, he pretended that he was some Asian guy from Japan, and he showed me a bunch of pictures of. And I looked at them, and I just knew something was off. It didn't look like the same person. It just looked like a bunch of different Asian boys. And then he tried to tell me this crazy story that he was this a famous singer from Japan. And ironically, the pictures that he sent me was a lead singer from a band that I already knew of, which was Nightmare. It was either Nightmare or Gazzetti. He tried to say he was the lead singer of one of those two bands, which I knew was full of it. And then he finally admitted he wasn't that person. And then he tried to claim that he was the lead singer's he was a half brother of the lead singer from Nightmare. It was just insane, the mind games he was trying to play. And then when I quit talking to him for a while, he tried to come up with a new personality and try to tell me that he was basically the person that works with the lead singer from Nightmare. I'm like, Lord mercy. But even though I knew he was full of it, I just still kept talking to him anyway, because like I said, I was just desperate. But I finally got tired of the lies and cut him off. There was different times where I'd be talking to someone and they would threaten to kill themselves if I broke up with them. Even though we never physically met, I was never really with them. For them, if I broke up with them, they'd kill themselves, and it it was just a manipulation tactic. In fact, the first person I mentioned that tried to, give me some pictures of 14, that's what he did. He was putting on a whole show, screaming on the phone, as like that he stabbed himself or something. And ironically, my older brother and his friend at the time, Jeremy, was um, listening to the conversation. And then he's like, you know what? To tell me tell me, the name of the health department and stuff where you live. And that guy did. And then he told him he was going to call the ambulance there. Then all of a sudden, he's like, oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Which I knew then he was just being, he was just being full of it. I mean, there's just many different instances where people try to, when I was a teenager, people try to get me to meet with them alone, and there was different times when, people said awful things to me. It, but unfortunately, it did get to the point where that did start sending pictures, which is one of the biggest things I regret because I don't know what ever happened to them. I don't know if those people that I shared with ever kept it to themselves or if they sent it or posted. I have no idea. I don't know. But but like I said, my desperation, I was just wanting attention. I was just wanting friends, and on the internet, it's just way too easy to find that only negatively. Because they're not there for you. They're not there to support you. They're just there for them. They're just there to laugh at you or to hurt you. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone that posts online or whatever is like that, or is in chat rooms is like that, but unfortunately, there's way too many people that are. And sadly, there's been many times when young girls or boys would try to meet with someone online, then they end up dead. Or they end up, being taken and other awful things. I mean, if I had to go back and do it all over again, I would have never even gotten onto the computer in the first place. I would tell myself, no, just go outside and just go outside and do something outside. You don't need to be on here. The one person that did meet, in person, that was just an awful experience as well. But thankfully, like I said, he was who he said he was. He was at the age that he said he was and everything. But it was just, and it wasn't that he was mean or a jerk or anything. It was just, it, it was just terrible for me because it was my first time meeting him. And, well, he decided to bring all his friends along. Like, there was maybe 4 or 5 of them. And I didn't even know that he was having friends coming with him. And let's just say throughout the entire day, he hardly said a word to me. Wouldn't really talk to me. He was all about, talking to them and everything. And then at the end of the day, he asked me if I had a good time, and unfortunately, I lied to him and said I did, and hugged him and never contacted him ever again. And that's where I was at fault, because I should have been honest and said, well, to be quite honest with you, no, because you never said anything to me. I thought it was just gonna be us, and if you wanted to invite your friends, I would appreciate it if you at least, told me, or at least included me in on your conversations, but you didn't. But the thing is, that whole thing could have gone a whole lot worse for me. It could have been a bad person that wasn't honest about who he was, and I could be dead. I went on the internet to find value in myself, and just I went on the internet to reach out to a total bunch of strangers just to reassure that I was of worth. And all I got was people that just wanted to harm me. And sadly, a lot of these people that are posting themselves and do all these crazy things on the internet now, they're in the they're in the kind of the same spot I was. They're just wanting to find value. They're wanting people to tell them, you, you are somebody. You deserve to be loved. Your life is meaningful. You have a purpose. They're just wanting someone to reach out to them and comfort them. But sadly, a lot of people are either trying to lead them down the wrong path, or they're just taking advantage of them and trying to harm them. You don't have to find any worth or value in a bunch of strangers you don't know. You don't have to you know, post yourself doing all these sexual things or weird things just to, get some attention or friends. You don't have to put yourself in danger and talk to strangers and take risks. God gives you value. God gives you worth. God gives you purpose. He stands right by you even if the whole world is against you. And let's be honest, a lot of people that you talk to on the internet that act like your friends, they're only your friends as long as you go along with their narrative and as long as you do what they want you to do. And as soon as you don't, they completely turn their backs on you. I mean, just look at all the people who have walked away from from the leftist side of things. Detransitioners, or black men and women that decided to become conservative, or even with far leftists, as soon as they do something that goes out of line for the rest of leftists, they get jumped on. As soon as they do something that feels just a little out of line, they're pounced on by the rest of leftists. And that should tell you it's not about them caring about you. It's about them trying to make you do what they want you to do. With us conservatives, we agree to disagree. We don't always agree with each other on everything. I mean, there's Muslim conservatives I wouldn't agree with when it comes to, religious things, but there's plenty of other things I could agree with them on. There's atheists, conservatives that could disagree with some things on, and there's other things I could agree on. You don't have to completely agree with each other 100% to to understand that you can work with each other to fight for the better of your country, for the better of your families. You don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to go off and walk on eggshells to please everybody. You don't have to, do things you don't want to do just to get them to show, just to get their approval. Desperation and loneliness pushes a lot of people to look for love in the wrong places. The internet is not the place to look. It's just not. And I learned that the hard way. You cannot. Love and friendship is something that hardly ever exists on the internet. It may work out for some people, but for many people, it doesn't. And it's more dangerous than anything. Whether you're a person that's on the left or someone that's on the right. God made you with a purpose, He made you with value, and He does love and care about you very much. You just have to be willing to open yourself to see it. And once you find your identity in Him, nobody could take that from you. Because again, even if the whole world stands against you, you have God right by your side. You do not have to be a Saul to defeat Goliath, because Saul wasn't the one that defeated Goliath. It was David, a small shepherd boy. All he knew is that God was with him, and that's all that he needed to face a giant. Maybe you have giants in your life to face, and you just need God to help you defeat those giants. I understand it is very easy to get people's attention over the internet, especially these days. It is so easy to do. I get it. But sometimes easy is not the best thing. Going down the easy path, the easy road is not the best thing. Many times it's more destructive than anything. And if you're struggling, with finding friends or finding somebody to care about you, God could provide that for you too, if you trust Him. Because at the least time that, I found, let's see, well, when I was a junior in high school, and that one friend I had, completely turned her back on me. I found real friends at the last place I expected it, and they truly cared about me. They did not care that I was different from them. They didn't care that I was from a different school. They didn't care that at the time I dressed, well, more like an emo, and they was girly girls. They didn't care about what people at my school thought of me. They just saw that I could be someone that could be a friend for them and they could be a friend for me. And God provided that. He provided me true friends, or at least expected it. And I'll always remember them. I'll never ever forget them. You know, the 2 years that I knew them at school was the best years of of my life. In the school, in the years of school, that was the best 2 years of my life. That did far more for me than that one friend that I had, and I knew her for 15 years or more. They did more for me than the people I went to school with. And it was because, they were rare gems, full of what, they weren't snobby, they weren't horrid, they just accepted me. And I didn't have to ask them. They just did it. Maybe there's somebody already in your life that sees your value, that sees your worth, and that is trying to reach out to you and you just don't realize it. And I'm not meaning someone that's on internet. Maybe it's someone that might be around you right now. Someone that's honestly trying to be there for you and help you now, and maybe you just don't understand that they really do care about you. I do hope that you do have that. If not, then I hope and pray that God provides you someone that'll do that. But at the same token, though, understandably so, we do have to be cautious sometimes, especially if you've been hurt by many people around you, which was my case. I was basically the black sheep of my school for so long. I just got so used to sitting, by myself at the table and stuff. It was just a norm for me. And the one girl, like I said, that was supposed to be my friend, she